you're an artist, can you, use that as a platform to draw awareness to marine debris? I see lots of different folks that are collecting beautiful, colorful pieces of plastic and then turning them into amazing art creations that are drawing awareness to this problem. Can you, write letters? Are you a great writer? Are you a great networker? You've got a big group of people that that you can engage. And I would just encourage people to lean into their strengths and, of course, get out of your comfort zone, get in front of that front-facing camera, go up and make your speeches. And I don't know, that's how we all grow.
This is the Aptitude Outdoors podcast, where we interview travelers, explorers, and outdoorsmen and women to bring you the best tips and stories from around the world. All right, everybody, welcome back to the Aptitude Outdoors podcast. Today, I'm joined by Meag Schwartz of Great Lakes Great Responsibility. Meag, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Paul. Thanks so much for having me.
Well, I am excited to talk to you because I used to do similar work to what you're doing with Great Lakes Great Responsibility. What made you say, I need to start this organization? Is there a pride where you just kind of getting involved with reading, plastic pollution? The Great Lakes in and of themselves are awesome. What kind of led you down this path to create this organization?
I'm a Great Lakes gal at heart. So grew up just down the block from Lake Huron. Have been passionate about the lakes for a while and moved back actually to my home village. I can see my old childhood home from where I sit right now. And this was in the fall of 2020. And when I did move back, of course, I wanted to hit up the beach again, my hometown beach. And I encountered quite a bit of plastic pollution, of course, from, the end of a long beach season. The beaches are well trafficked here. And before that had thought about potential business ideas, similar to a 4Ocean model where, if I were to sell a product and pull a pound of trash, could I come up with a model for that for the Great Lakes? Because I've always been passionate about conservation work. I've got, a background in environmental science, and I work for the Great Lakes Stewardship Initiative is my real work. So I work with K through 12 youth and teachers to teach them about conservation practices around the Great Lakes. And so was, steeped in that, but also feeling a little, inspired during a pandemic time to do something else and engage people beyond the K through 12 group to clean up trash in the Great Lakes region. And so after finding that trash on my local beach, I love to make, goals for myself, I'm going to read 12 books this year or, numerical goals. Mm-hmm. And I thought, could I personally, pick up 1 million pieces of trash? Would that be a goal that I could do on my own? And with some quick math, I figured out that I definitely could not. It would take me 3 decades to do that if I was picking up even 100 pieces of trash every day. So I knew, there's people like you that are passionate about the Great Lakes around the region. And so many people rely on the Great Lakes for their drinking water and for recreation and things. And so I knew I had to call upon pretty much an army of volunteers to get out there and hit the pavement and help me achieve this 1 million piece goal. So that's where the Great Lakes 1 million challenge was born. And we're well on our way. So we've picked up 166,000 plus pieces of trash. We get trash stats that come in every day through our website. And it's been really awesome to see this network of volunteers from across all 8 Great Lakes states and, Canada as well, come out of the woodwork and been able to partner across the whole basin.
When I used to do work with a local organization for plastic pollution specifically, we picked up, all trash, but plastic specifically was the main culprit 90% of the time. I think that really opened my eyes to the amount that's there. It's so excessive and it's not always naked, visible to the naked eye. The amount of trash hidden under things and below things and around things is astounding. There have been days when I used to take people out. We would fill up, if I took out 10 or 15 people, we'd get a truck bed full of trash in a few hours in an afternoon. And, I used to do all the keeping track of all the numbers for what we were collecting. And I mean, we were collecting, I think on average year, like 20 to 30,000 pounds of just crap. I mean, that's counting tires and heavy stuff.
Yeah.
It's excessive. And,
wow.
you know, are you kind of, since you're covering all of the Great Lakes, are you kind of seeing the things kind of on that same kind of scale? Like the numbers are just like mind blowing to you every time someone sends something in?
Yeah. I mean, I think the vast like volume that you can get in a really short amount of time, especially in urban areas or watersheds that are draining big swaths of land, is really incredible. You know, we in our form, I tried to make it pretty barrier free to have folks, you know, just be able to count the pieces of trash, you know, no big data sheet involved, but that type of like topical data is really, really important. And I think we're probably going to hear that way as we tune our sails, and we're still figuring this out a bit, but yeah, you know, different types of things that folks are finding too, balloons and straws and masks and gloves and things that have come from the pandemic as well has been really eye-opening. And you know, where I live in a pretty rural area, but the amount of trash that we see is still staggering. And I think that some of it is accidental, some of it's washed up too, because our storm drain systems are, you know, they're filter free. They essentially just drain right out into the lakes. And so you toss something out the window like a cigarette butt, and that's going right into the big lakes. So it's really about turning that plastic faucet off, is that big analogy that you know, you see across the board, is what folks have been saying. We got to stop with the plastic production and find out, you know, a bioplastic that will really work and that is suitable for the broad market for sure.
Yeah, and that's one of the things for me that's eye-opening as well is, you know, I think there's this view with people who aren't very well educated on the issue. There's this view that there's like this person that's always littering, and we need to stop littering, and it's so much more complicated than that on so many levels than just like the average one in, I'm making up a statistic, so don't kill me on the internet, people, but like 1 in 50 people that throw crap out their window when they're driving. Like, it's probably pretty uncommon. People do it. We all see people do it. We all know people who do it, but it's not like as common as like the average person doesn't just drive down the road and launch their McDonald's out their car window. Okay. So like, I think there's this thought that is like a passing thought that like, oh, I don't do that. It's everyone else. And I think that's kind of where people like us like to come in and educate. Like, it's not that simple. It's not a person that's specifically terrible that's just launching crap out their window. It's all of us. We're all doing it. We're all part of it. But in the bigger scale, it's coming from production. I mean, large mass production of plastic companies that are creating millions and millions and millions of pieces of plastic garbage a year that have no repercussions. So if you had to educate someone on that issue and you had, you know, a presentation or something, you had a quick couple minutes, how would you explain that to them? Because I could talk about it all day, but, you know.
Yeah. So I'm not, you know, I wouldn't say I'm an expert in like all things plastic, but I'm an optimist as well, and like to think that, you know, not most people are just throwing stuff out their windows. And typically that's not what I see. I mean, maybe in my own neighborhood, I see like, you know, beer cans and things like that in the ditches, but the stuff that's washing up on the beaches, that's not what, you know, people aren't just like pulling their truck up to the lake and, you know, emptying the bed of it and throwing their trash out that way. This stuff blows around. It's in our environment. We're creating it. And so, of course, because it's everlasting, it's going to, you know, get into the environment. It's going to stay in the environment and have really harmful effects to wildlife, to, you know, our drinking water and things like that. So yeah, I would say that it's less about like pointing the finger at consumers and more about like going up the food chain a little bit, and, you know, who's making the decisions to put this stuff out there, because it's really going to have detrimental effects to all of us, the environment included, because we pull our drinking water, you know, right from these lakes, and they're a really precious international asset. So it's that's where our name came from, is Great Lakes, Great Responsibility. It really is our responsibility to keep this stuff clean.
Hey everybody, thanks for checking out this episode. If you feel like you're getting something out of it, go down in the link below and buy me a coffee. The Aptitude Outdoors podcast is fully self-funded by me. So if you're digging it, I'm just throwing out a tip jar, and I appreciate you listening. Let's dive right back into this episode.
It's always good to see when places try, and I use the word try because it's not as easy as, like, a lot of people want these simple solutions where it's like, I don't understand why this company just doesn't. And unless it's affecting their bottom line, or unless they have someone leading the charge that is conscious of environmental issues, like, it's pretty much a non-issue. Like, I used to work at a Fortune 500 company, these big companies. It's not like there's a guy making the decisions. There's hundreds and hundreds of people in this big pyramid chain of command that are making millions of decisions a year. And if that isn't affecting how much money they're going to make, they're not going to care. And, there's just so much talk about how consumers can change the tide of this kind of stuff. But with plastic, in my opinion, and I like to be an optimist as well, it's not as easy because everything that you get at the store comes in plastic. Cereal, water in emergency case, right here on Lake Erie. I'm on the shore. I was directly affected by the algal bloom years ago that shut down our water supply. That kind of stuff, everything's in plastic. So it's not as easy as going down to the corner store and buying plastic-free this. What would I buy? There's nothing at a gas station you can buy that's not wrapped in plastic or something. So it's a little harder. I think it's more of an advocacy and a gathering facts and what you're finding on the internet or with your stuff, and posting on the internet with your how much trash you're finding, stuff like this, and raising awareness to eventually having people being like, hey, we're tired of this. I don't know if you would agree with that, but that's my vision of what I see. It's not as simple as I'm not going to buy inorganic food. That's still wrapped. Everything's wrapped in plastic.
Yeah, my mindset has really shifted over probably the past 5 years to trying to be really diligent in my own personal choices and, becoming zero waste. And, I don't have access to bulk food stores or anything like that, where you might find those in an urban environment. So really plastic is unavoidable now. And it's cheap, it's convenient. And we live in a world of fast and but we didn't used to live like this. So there were, we used to package things in other stuff. So I think it's cheap because it's petroleum based, and, that's where we get our energy from right now. So those byproducts, and they're subsidized too. So that's also another topic of conversation.
Yeah.
But, we have to stop relying on these pretty much biohazardous materials that make it out into the environment. A lot of the content that I like to post is Great Lakes inspirational content, and, getting people out, connecting with nature, and providing stewardship for the Great Lakes instead of, zero waste things that people can do, because it does just have to shift. It's not gonna, you can vote with your dollars so much. And there has been a little bit of shift in the market, I would say. A lot of it's greenwashing, where companies are saying that things are recyclable and they're not. But that helps a little bit, but I think we can only vote with our dollars so much, and we really have to start seeing where this stuff is coming from.
Well, and something you touched on briefly that I really agree with, you said your content's mostly about getting people outdoors in the Great Lakes and exploring the Great Lakes and things of that nature. 100% for that. I've said as many episodes as I've had of this podcast, I've said, people don't typically care about facts. The average person doesn't care about facts. They don't want to read scientific literature and understand. 1 million pounds of plastic or pieces of plastic to a person is so what? You know what I mean? Facts don't drive people. Stories drive people. Experiences drive people. So I've always taken the approach of, if you want people to care about the issues that you and I are concerned about, whether it's wildlife conservation, whether it's pollution, whether it's environmental factors, you first have to get them to care about the outdoors in general. Kayaking, fishing, recreational backpacking, whatever that is if they start there and have fun, they're going to start to care by proxy. Like, you can't go into the woods and a backpack on your back and expect 5 days of solitude and then go back there and you just see there's litter and plastic and toilet paper everywhere, and then not come out of that and be like, hey, that's not right. I want to do something about that. Like, that's where that comes from. That was my natural progression, and I'm trying to like put that out there in the things that I do. Like, if you can get somebody to enjoy the outdoors first, then they're naturally going to be aware of these issues. And that's when you can like be the fisherman and hook them. Be like, okay, now let's do something about it. That's my personal approach. So I really resonate with what you're doing in that capacity. What are some of the things that you kind of enjoy outdoors wise, aside from, you know, the plastic and the organization and things of that nature, and your day job, which is environmental? We'll touch on that here in a minute too. What are some of the things that you really enjoy doing out in the Great Lakes?
Yeah, so right now is prime time to get in the actual Great Lakes water because it's warm, warm enough, tolerable enough to swim in. So I live, in the part of Lake Huron that's part of the Thunder Bay National Marine Sanctuary. And there's over 100 marked shipwrecks that are here. And I love snorkeling the shipwrecks because they're a great visual, it's really amazing. There's quite a few that are shallow. And, the water's clear, of course, from the quagga mussels, which is good and bad. But it's fun to, strap on the mask and the snorkel and fins and get out there. And I've been practicing on my free diving a little bit, too, to see how long cool. I can hold my breath and dive down a little bit further. You're not supposed to touch the shipwrecks at all, but they're great because they have mooring buoys that are adjacent to the wreck. So you don't have to drop anchor. You can just tie right up, your paddleboard, your kayak, or a boat. You can tie right up to the mooring buoy and then jump on in. So that's been my most recent favorite thing to explore outside. I also love, hiking, mountain biking, lots of the non-motor sports. I'm not really like an ATV kind of person. I'm more of like a quiet sports kind of gal. But yeah, just anything that's going to get me in the water or out in the woods, pretty much.
Hell yeah.
And I think, yeah. Looping back to what you were saying too, I think it is a really like pivotal time where folks are exploring more, exploring our state parks, our national parks more. I think that was really because of the pandemic, folks couldn't go anywhere. So they were exploring more domestically and locally. And there's been this really big, push. I think, Gen Z is a big nature appreciation generation, and they're, very environmentally minded. And I think it's really important when, I think people are building an appreciation for nature, and it's important to educate them about like the leave no trace principles and, pack in, pack out. And I think the DNR and other organizations are doing a great job of that, but, we could still be, spreading that message even more because it is really important. You don't want to see evidence of humans when you're trying to be, finding that solitude out in nature. So I'm very, that's kind of the message that we want to preach on our platform is kind of the leave no trace stuff while you are out in nature appreciating.
Yeah, and I like what you said about the quagga mussels. I just finished reading Dan Egan's book, The Death and Life of the Great Lakes. I've said that on a few podcasts already, but it really opened my eyes to the way that these ecosystems are treated as just like another commodity. It's just like whatever, whatever happens. And, over the decades and centuries at this point in time that we've been in the United States, as, industrial culture, the Great Lakes have gone through a ton of changes. And now every time I go out on the Great Lakes, I can't help but think about the quagga mussels, and I look at the water, I'm like, it's so beautiful and clear, and I was like, but damn it, this is not necessarily a great thing. It's like a give and a take. Like, it's so beautiful. I was just in Lake Michigan a few weeks ago. I rented a kayak out there, and I just had like my fishing pole with me, so I just like paddled probably like a quarter a mile offshore and just was looking around, and I was like, I can see the bottom. There's no nothing alive down there. There's no growth. It's all sand. And I'm like, it's cool. But at the same time, like, I really wish there were some fish here and some things to see. That's like a give and take.
Yeah.
I don't know. It sucks, but it brings people in and it brings recreational dollars. I don't got to look at the bright side, I guess, at this point in time. I'm not sure. I don't know.
Yeah. It's, it definitely has evolved over time. I wonder what, the first nations would have, how they viewed the lakes. They probably were murkier, but had more nutrients and, abundant life, because as it moved up the trophic levels, it could support larger and more plentiful fish and diverse fish too. So yeah, definitely. I mean, they're beautiful because they look like the Caribbean now, but it's definitely different from where it was probably even just a couple hundred years ago. So
yeah. Well, the ship thing, that's really cool. I need to check that out because I always wondered where that was. And like, this is part of the reason I love doing this podcast so much. I just learn about all this cool stuff that I like to do from people that I'm talking to. It's like the coolest thing ever. So are they like pretty close to shore? Like you said, you paddleboard out there and stuff, or what? Like, how do you go about that? Like, what do you need to take with you to be able to go check these things out? Is it like just you throw on a snorkel in your little pack on your board and go, or what's that all about?
Yeah, so there's probably half a dozen that are really easily accessible by paddleboard, where you can just, launch your kayak or paddleboard right from shore, and you can see the buoy, so you know what you're aiming for. Of course, you want to bring like a PFD, personal flotation device, your snorkel, one that fits you really well. I know for the men, they got to trim their little mustaches sometimes to make a nice seal.
Game over. I can't go. I'm sorry.
Yeah. You can find one that will work for you, but then fins too. You can either do split fins that have like the little split down the middle, or like just a straight fin. And sometimes I wear a wetsuit, just a real thin one, depending on what time of the season it is. But I was out on Friday with no wetsuit for, probably we were in the water maybe 45 minutes or so, and it was just fine. So, yeah. But yeah, there's probably half a dozen, quite a few schooners that have like the big masts on them. A lot of these went down in like the late 1800s. They, ran aground, they collided with each other which is like incredible to me. I'm like, there's a lot of space out in the Great Lakes. Like, how are you guys hitting each other? But like with the, no navigation systems, and they were following kind of the same shipping lanes. If it's dark out, you can't see each other. And there were quite a few collisions. So yeah, there's quite a diverse set of wrecks that are here. And I know about them because my office is located at the actual Thunder Bay National Marine Sanctuary, the Great Lakes Maritime Heritage Center that's here in Alpena, which is a shipwreck museum. And they have a glass bottom boat that goes out. So if you're not into like actually putting your face in the water, you can still access the wrecks by going out on the glass bottom boat and viewing them through these large glass viewing wells as well.
That is so cool. I need to get in gear and get up there and check that out. That sounds so, it's like right up my alley. I love doing that off the wall crap. So you said you work for the Great Lakes Stewardship Coalition. Is that right? Did I write that down right?
Yeah. Great Lakes Stewardship Initiative, the Northeast Michigan. Yeah. The Northeast Michigan hub of that. There's 7 different hubs throughout the state. So we do place-based education. So like community-based education where students learn about like the natural assets that are in their own backyard essentially, and then work with local partners like the Fish and Wildlife Service or the DNR, the Conservation District, these local experts to do stewardship projects. So that looks like a variety of things. It can be anything from, water quality testing to invasive crayfish surveying, where they're contributing to like actual research that's going on. It can be things that aren't water-based, like installing pollinator gardens or green infrastructure, which can help with water quality too. So like installing like rain gardens or bioswales. But we support projects in a 9-county region here in Northeast Michigan.
Dang, that's really awesome. I think that's one thing I like to touch on a lot too, is getting kids involved, because I think from personal experience I don't have kids, but I have a lot of nieces and nephews, and I think kids naturally love the outdoors, but they just don't get the opportunities like they used to get outside. I mean, I was one of those kids that was like, yes, I played video games. I grew up in that generation. I never claimed to be this like lifetime outdoorsman and nobody knows more than me. I was like just a normal kid, but I did have the luxury at this point, I would view it as a luxury to grow up in the woods. And there were days where it was like, my parents were like, whatever, play video games, we don't care. But a lot of the time it was like, get out of the house, go. There's 10 acres of woods, don't die, we don't care, just come back later. And, I hated it back then. I was like, what am I going to do? And you get all dirty but then you start catching frogs and you start finding weird crap and bones and deer antlers and all this cool stuff and building forts and telling scary stories. And I think more kids need that. So you're working with educational programs. I'm sure you come across a lot of kids. Do you have a I don't know what you would call it, a climate on what kids are at with the outdoors nowadays? Because I'm noticing that, to me, it feels like they want to get out there. They just don't know what to do.
Yeah. I think you touched on like an important point too, in that it is a luxury for some kids to be able to go outside. Some kids just don't have access to it, especially if you're in an urban area. Like I live in a rural area, so I can look outside and there's woods for acres and acres. But getting to a place that feels like nature is tough for some kids that live in urban areas, specifically in like Southeast Michigan. Just they're in the concrete jungle of sorts. So you don't think about what it requires to get someone to a nature-based place. Public transportation. Some of these places you have to have like a park pass to get in, and so we've been thinking a lot about that as well. With our work for sure. And I do think that you're right, that kids do want to be outside, and some kids in my experience just light up. Sometimes kids have behavioral issues when they're in the classroom because they're not able to have like these kinesthetic experiences where they can be hands-on and be getting wet and dirty and things like that. And some kids just light up and they're like a whole different student when they get outside. And I think that it is really important to give them that opportunity, because maybe they are, stuck at home with like 4 brothers and sisters and all they have is like their backyard and they don't get to go, catch frogs and do things like that. So I think we like to give students the opportunity to experience the water, the land, so they can treasure it and become like that next generation of stewards. We're really like passing the baton onto them in the decades to come. So having them be good environmental leaders and decision makers now, and teaching them like the skills and like the foundation of what they need to know to make good decisions in the future is what we're after.
And I think one of the reasons that, the parents like it when the kids go outside is you can just run them ragged out there. I mean, there's so much. Just go, do whatever you want. Run, scream, jump, break stuff, take logs. I don't care. Wear yourself out by the end of the day. Because we took a trip when we were on Lake Michigan. Nieces and nephews were there, and there's big sand dunes, and they just wanted to run up and down them. And I'm like, have at it all day long. And they did. They crashed. It was over. There was no fighting. There was no screaming. They were worn out. So parents listening, one reason in and of itself, they will be exhausted by the end of the day. And I think, a lot of the stuff we talk about nowadays in schools is ADHD and which is obviously a diagnosed condition. It's not just some like made up thing. Like it's a real thing that people have. I've never been diagnosed, but I probably have ADHD. My brother definitely has ADHD. And it's like outdoors is the best place to be if you have ADHD. Like you can see a woodpecker and then 2 seconds later you can turn and there's like a turtle and then there's like this. Like your attention is always all over the place because there's so much to see. And I love it. I will be talking to someone about water and then all of a sudden I'll see a fish and then I'll see a turtle in a tree or a bird in a tree. And I'll be like, this is so great. Everything here all the time. I think it's absolutely perfect. And it kind of just burns that candle at both ends with kids. It just keeps them high strung and having fun and getting dirty and learning. It's really important. So another note, the Great Lakes, very unique to the planet. I mean, this is some of the biggest inland lakes in the world. I mean, it supports millions and millions and millions of people. And then whether we know it or not, we're continually, taking this for granted, polluting it, putting plastic in it. And the thing I worry about specifically, I mean, obviously there's a plethora of issues that everyone could worry about with the Great Lakes. But plastic, the plastic side of it is when it starts leaching into water and, animals are ingesting it and it's just building up the food chain. Because I eat a lot of food from the Great Lakes. I mean, I'm Midwest as they get. I go out and I catch walleye. I'm out bass fishing all the time, bluegill, crab, all the panfish stuff. Like I eat the stuff out of the Great Lakes. I eat the stuff out of lakes in Michigan. And it just gets you thinking, like, how is this affecting me, my health long term? Because as we know, like plastics, and when they leach into water, can cause like cancers and certain diseases, and it's not a good thing. Do you see any issues on that end? I know you probably don't dive that deep in with the stuff that you're doing at Great Lakes. Great responsibility, but do you think about that? Because I think about that a lot, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, there's new research that came out a couple months ago that, microplastics are in our blood, in human blood. I think that's probably because that's the first time they went looking for them. They've probably been there for decades. They're also in like the deepest parts of our lungs as well, which, they're in the air. But yeah, the bioaccumulation in wildlife is really scary. Particularly because the plastics do attract those other noxious toxins as well. So, when you're uptaking the plastic, you're also uptaking the DDTs or whatever. I can't remember. They're like some of the forever chemicals and things like that like to bind to the plastics. So yeah, I do think about that quite a bit. Microfibers, microplastics. We have done some just quick experiments with students sampling microplastics in beach sands. And we tried to get like a control sample from the tap water and found microfibers in the tap water. And so that was really scary and kind of an eye-opening experience for myself. I don't know if it had that much of an effect on the fifth graders I was working with, but I was like, this isn't good, you guys. So yeah, it is really scary. We have, my office is also next to the Fish and Wildlife Service office here in Alpena, and they have seen, in stomach samples of fish, there's plastics, of course, which is scary. And we've got some of those samples that we show the students. And the students, we also get samples of that, like the albatross boluses from the ocean, but they still have a really big impact on youth. I think that the whole turtle straw affiliation is very strong with youth. And so as many touch points as we can have with them where we show like this is really affecting wildlife, that's going to resonate with them and make them make better choices, whether it is individual choices or, advocating for bigger, change on bigger levels as well.
I will tell you, about a month ago, I was in Texas doing some filming work for some friends, and one of my friends owns a charter business down there for fishing, and, I was in town, so I was like, hey, can we go fishing? We go out there, and, since I'm not just like, I know he's one of my good friends, Derek, he has a podcast called Impact Outdoors, and he was like, since you're not just like my average client that comes down here and just wants to go out and have a little bit of fun. He's like, I want to do some personal stuff. Like, you want to go like way out in the ocean and go fish in like these really far parts I don't usually get to go to. I was like, sign me up. Let's go. So we're cruising. I think people that are from the ocean are probably saying like this isn't that far. For me, it was really far. I think we're like 15 or 20 miles out in the ocean. Okay, so we're like in the nothing of the ocean. You can't see land. All you see is these big shipping freighters. They're lined up out there from, I guess they're not allowed to come in like they used to because of the pandemic and stuff. Whatever. I don't know. I don't know all the details. I don't even know why I'm talking about that. But come out there. There are these. He's explaining to me these patches of floating, some sort of kelp or seaweed that kind of naturally detaches and just kind of floats around in the ocean. And these little patches of seaweed have their own ecosystems, and there's certain crabs or something that only live on these floating patches. And there's certain fish, they're called like triple tail, that like to use these for cover. And a lot of big fish in the ocean will use these for cover as well, because the sun's shooting directly down all the time on them in the ocean. So they'll kind of hide under these things like any fish is attracted to cover. And we pull up to one on chance, and he's explaining all this to me, and there is a freaking plastic chair leg just shooting up out of the middle. I was like, so like, this isn't just like this is like a thing we see and they try and scare us with documentaries. Like, I went out there and I'm like, dear Lord, like there is a chair. And I mean, there was just crap floating all over. I mean, it's not like huge conglomerations like there are the big plastic patches, but there's like just junk. And 15 to 20 miles offshore, you'd think, no way. And the Great Lakes, they're no different. There's no difference in the way that they're going to operate compared to an ocean. They're huge bodies of water. So that stuff is like really eye-opening because we hear about it so often, but until you got to experience that yourself, you wouldn't think a plastic chair would be that significant. But when you're 20 miles away from the shoreline, that's significant in this rare ecosystem. So it's like, I don't know. It's disheartening because we hear about this. We see this stuff all the time. And it's just like at one point you're just like, what do I do? I don't know how do you like on a personal level, how do you deal with that? Because it's like a lot of people aren't as aware, you know what I mean? So they don't see the impact daily like you or I would in this eco world that we're kind of very conscious of.
Yeah. It ebbs and flows for me, waxes and wanes. The environmental world can be really overwhelming. And so I kind of, sometimes when I'm preaching this stuff, I do feel kind of preachy because I feel like people should know this stuff already. But I think it really is about just like, spreading the message and sharing awareness of like that these problems do exist. And we can kind of, I don't know. It helps me feel like less overwhelmed and maybe like share the burden. Like, yeah, here, you take a little bit of this. Like, I can't do this on my own. I need to share this terrible news with you. No, I don't know. It can be overwhelming. So I think, the best we can do is just like teach youth, advocate for change on a higher level and try not to get too overwhelmed, because it does seem like around every corner, there's a new conservation problem that's happening. And that's really a lot of like what my job is too, is like linking up professionals with teachers. So the teachers know like, okay, this is a new issue in the Great Lakes now. We have PFAS, these forever chemicals that are, linked to firefighting materials and, like nonstick pans and things like that. So this is something else that we need to teach the youth about. So I think it's, I think just beating the drum and keep on marching forward and sharing with as many people as possible. So, this next generation can really become the good environmental folks that are going to be good decision makers.
Yeah. Do you get any crap from people about like choosing to attempt to remove yourself from that cycle? I mean, like even like I'm drinking a seltzer water thing. Like these cans are even lined with plastic. Like when I say there's no escape, there's no escape. Like it is like these are lined with plastic. It is what it is. Like you have to ride a line of like living a life and being like, existing and like having even a little bit of enjoyment. Like we could all just go and drink only tap water in steel jugs and only eat organic chicken that we bring our own containers that are stainless steel. But like at some point you also have to like live your life and just be a human being too. And that's a line that I ride a lot, but I do get for choosing to try and live with as little impact as I can on a reasonable level. I'm no saint. I don't claim to be. I just try and do the things that I can to make things as not bad as possible, if that makes sense. Like, I just consciously try and live my life in that way. Whether it makes an impact in the end after however long we live, whatever. It probably will make a very minuscule impact on the planet. But I think it's the point of saying, if I can do this, anyone can do this. And if enough of us do this, it will start to send a message, that, hey, we don't agree with this. The likelihood of that happening at this point in time is probably pretty low. If things ever got bad enough, I think it would. But do you find, back to my main point, I'm sorry, I ramble a lot. Do you think that do you get criticism, I guess? Because I do get criticism from people. They think I'm an absolute maniac for just like living a lower impact life. Like, I don't constantly buy new clothes and focus on the new gear. Like, I'm still rocking the fleece that I've had for 10 years, like I don't care about material stuff as much as, say, the average population, I guess. So, like, do you get criticism? That's the longest question I've ever asked, probably, but.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think I get weird looks more than like criticism when I'm like, bringing my own coffee mug. I got married in 2020 and, one of my memories on Facebook just popped up because I was trying to source our silverware and plates and napkins, like, from people instead of buying single-use stuff. So I was trying to get that, where I didn't have to, either rent it and spend $1 million or like buy plastic silverware and things like that. So yeah, I think it's more of like the, like the side eye, like what's going on here kind of thing, rather than like criticism. But I have, I mentioned before, I kind of have shifted my mindset a little bit. And like, I used to feel a lot of guilt if I ever, I'm at the coffee shop and I forget my mug. Okay, I have to have a single use, coffee thing or go without. So it's, what's that decision there? Or I don't know. I think it is too, like going back, it's the luxury to be able to make these decisions too, and to be able to opt for a more expensive option. And maybe it's more expensive upfront, reusable containers and things like that, or reusable bags, or things that you might have to invest in to avoid using plastic. Or do you even have like the bandwidth to think about that? Because people are facing so many other issues in their lives. Like, I feel, I don't have kids to think about. I think living a life with kids would be really hard to avoid plastic for sure. Sure. I don't have, I got a lot of extra time in my life to think about this stuff. And I think it is a luxury to be able to have that bandwidth to think about the choices that I'm making, because I, live in this world. So I wouldn't, and I've gotten like less judgy of other people too for being, for maybe not making the most eco-friendly options, because sometimes it's just unavoidable. Sometimes you don't know what the best option is. There's like local businesses that have opted to do the, what is it called? Compostable, silverware and things like that. We don't have a composting facility around here. So really, like, that decision is not, it doesn't jive, because that stuff is, it basically acts like plastic unless it's put into a commercially compostable facility. So it's, I don't know.
Exactly. That's where I'm at too. I don't know. And that is something, as I went to school for culture anthropology and environmental anthropology kind of like blended together. It's just kind of what it turned into by chance. And that's where a lot of this kind of awakening happened for me. But so many of the factors that we face in the, conservation and or / environmental world, whatever you want to call it, I don't really care what they're called. It's all the same thing to me. Like, stop doing bad shit to the planet, essentially, is the umbrella I fall under. But so many of the societal factors that, like, we people that are out here actively campaigning for this stuff have the luxury to worry about and think about is so often overlooked as well. I think you hit on a great point there, because the way I look at it is, if you have the choice between making rent and saving money on food and shopping at the dollar store or something, and all you can afford is the bare necessities, you don't give a shit about plastic. That is the last thing on your mind. So we can't just be these like plastic Nazis out here like, you're bad, and you don't have to feel guilty if you, like, I've been a trillion times where I've had to drink plastic water bottles, or you're out somewhere, you're traveling, like there's not always an option for something. And yes, nobody's going to go out of their way when they can barely afford to live to go buy a $20 stainless steel container that's BPA free. Like, they don't care. So like, I think in the environmental world, we get too far up our own butts, and we kind of like we end up preaching to the choir, whereas like there's a lot of other factors that are going into this. Like, people are just trying to stay alive. So like I that is something I would say often gets pushed to the bottom, and we just like to be mad. And I think we need to get better about that. Me included. I'm one of them,
Yeah, when push comes to shove, like, people are going to make the most economical decision, or the decision of convenience, because people are strapped for time and money. And so the decisions need to be made like further upstream, like, make biodegradable the only option. So like, and then like spread the cost among everybody, so it is like the cheapest option. Because people are just going to go for whatever is cheap and easy, and I don't blame them, honestly.
There's nothing you can do. I think that's where it's great that organizations like yours exist, because they're a avenue that can lead to bigger change, because you can get people who are mildly interested to help, get involved, do volunteer work, help track data, which I think is super important. If you are someone that's listening and you want to get involved in environmental work, go volunteer for Great Lakes for Great Responsibility. Go volunteer for Plastic Oceans. Go volunteer for whatever issue in the outdoors is most near and dear to your heart. That's a good place to start, because you're going to meet like-minded people. You're going to, have people that have similar interest in caring about that specific issue. And then an organization like yours can help push that up the ladder. Maybe you're not the advocacy arm. Maybe you're not going to Congress or whatever, or your state representative, but maybe you're feeding the data to someone who is. Like, it's all helps. It all helps. But I don't know, is that something you're interested in? Do you guys do any advocacy work, or do you help? Are you just helping to further the data? Not just. I didn't mean to say just, but
no, it's yeah. So capacity wise, we haven't gone after any advocacy work, just because this is my little side hustle, my side gig for now. But I think that we would like to use our data to leverage change, and we do feed it into larger data sets that are helping move things forward. So that's definitely one of the goals for sure.
And that's hard. I think to me, I don't know why I say even, to me, the thought of going and talking to like a state representative or a congressperson just seems overwhelming. And I know that's what I need to start doing, but it's like, where do I start? Like, logically, I know that I know these issues, and I could probably write up something that sounds halfway intelligent to like propose to them. But it's always like that, like, imposter syndrome thing. Like, do I really though? Or are they just going to think I'm an idiot? Like, so I think it's really hard, and there are some people who are just insanely good at that stuff. There are organizations out there who are insanely good at that stuff, and they have people that's their world they live in. But I'm also a big advocate of just like, if nobody else is going to do it, then it's your problem. You take it on and figure it out. And that's kind of where I'm at now. I don't when you started the organization, I'm sure that was kind of, I don't want to talk for you, but I'm sure that was kind of the vibe, is like, nobody's doing anything about this. I'm going to do something about it. Do you have any advice for people who maybe are in the same boat? Like, they want to make a change and they just don't know where to start. Like, how did you come up and be like, I need to do this? Yeah,
it was really a ready, fire, aim situation. I don't know if I'm using that terminology correctly, but it was let's just do something, because I recognize that there's a problem in my community, and there really was like a little fire in me before I even found the trash on my local like village beach here, because I found it other places, and it had just been growing and growing. So I would say like I am a through and through introvert. I am not somebody that's going to go up to a podium and make a big speech about something. But guess what? I've gotten a lot more comfortable and familiar with a front-facing camera and getting onto social media and using that as a platform, because I can still be by myself and make my little tirades and my little speeches and, you know, beat that trash pickup drum. But I can be by myself doing it or with a small group or whatever. But you just kind of have to just lean into like wherever you shine. If you're an artist, can you use that as a platform to draw awareness to marine debris? I see lots of different folks that are collecting beautiful, colorful pieces of plastic and then turning them into amazing art creations that are drawing awareness to this problem. Can you, write letters? Are you a great writer? Are you a great networker? You've got a big group of people that that you can engage. And I would just encourage people to lean into their strengths and, of course, get out of your comfort zone, get in front of that front-facing camera, go up and make your speeches. And I don't know, that's how we all grow. So, and that's how things get moved forward. I would say, too, I have faced a little, quite a bit of imposter syndrome, even though I'm out, on the front lines picking up trash and I see what's coming in. I wouldn't consider myself like an expert in plastics in general. I see the repercussions of what has happened, or really even Great Lakes stuff. Like I have a master's degree in environmental science and, took limnology courses and, did all the things, but I still face I don't know everything. There's people that are smarter than me, but I think we're all part of this collective community and we all do have to raise our voices, and the more voices that are, calling out to their leadership to make change, the better.
Yeah, it's weird to especially the people that listen to this podcast, when they would find out that I'm also like a super introvert. Like, this is the last thing anybody that ever known me for my whole life would think I would be doing, because I am not like, if, for instance, last weekend I went to a festival. My dad's really into Bigfoot. I just love the mythology of Bigfoot, and it's fun. So there's a Hocking Hills, Ohio Bigfoot, which if you ever get the chance to go to Hocking Hills, Ohio, if you haven't been there, super cool place. I know Ohio's not like on anybody's bucket list in the world, but that's a really cool place. But anyway, I was down there and like there's tons of speakers. And I talked to people that are like very important in the eyes of the world, like in these organizations and these big organizations. And, I just have a podcast with them. It's an hour closed conversation between me and them. And like, it would probably blow people's mind to think that I'm an introvert. And I am. It's very weird. This is like the last thing anybody would ever thought I'd be doing. And, but when you're that passionate about something, it means that much to you. I think it's really easy to overcome that, because I don't know, in my head, I don't think I know what I'm talking about, but like I've studied these issues for almost a decade now. And when I remind myself of that often, like, all right, how many other people have read this ridiculously boring, dry 500-page book on like the American model of conservation? Like, probably not that many. So one thing that really, and believe it or not, this came from that book. It was a huge craze years ago, the 4-Hour Workweek, Tim Ferriss book, which, I love that book. A lot of people hate it just because of the title, but it's like, there's a lot of good life quotes and life lessons in that book that I think a lot of people can take away. And one of the things he said is like, you don't have to be an expert at anything to have people respect you in that field. He's like, you could go take like a couple of online courses and get a couple of certifications and then use those, and people are going to think you're the smartest person on earth. So all that being said, is like, for people who are listening who might be scared to undertake something or to speak out, or, maybe you don't like to be on camera. I don't even like to be on camera, but I do it. It's like one of those things that if you have a talent and you want to make a change, just do it. Just go out there, and you find it becomes so easy when you talk to like-minded people who are passionate, or to help talk to people who don't want to hear what you have to say. You can just like easily weave that conversation in like a respectful way. And like, I think that's so important, because everybody feels like they don't know what they're talking about. I'm sure there's people with PhDs out there that are just as insecure as the rest of us out here doing this kind of stuff. So don't ever feel like it's too big of a problem, because we need more voices, because the outdoors gets the crap end of the stick a lot of the times I feel like when it comes to a lot of things in the government, they're just stripping national parks and national monuments left and right, or they were for a while, and they're always trying to. So it's like, if you're not going to speak up, they're just going to keep doing what they're doing. So I think that's very important. Rant ended. Sorry about that. Just went through my head. I had to get
All
it
good.
out.
Yeah, there's a lot there. So I do want to say I have been to Hocking Hills. It's amazing. Anybody listening that has not gone before, get there.
Yes.
It's incredible. Some beautiful sandstone and water and caves and all that good stuff. You were talking about national parks. I have maybe a little question for you, and would love to hear your thoughts about the ban on single-use plastics in national parks by 2032. We had a little debate about this at a Teacher Summer Institute recently that I hosted, that we hosted a few weeks ago. But interested to hear what your thoughts are about that. Have you heard of this new policy that they put in place about banning single-use plastics at parks?
Yeah, just now. See, again, I don't always know everything. Most of the time I don't know everything. But that I personally think that's cool as hell. I mean, go for it. Ban the shit out of them. It's all things that are going to involve change, and this is my opinion, are going to suck for a while. Like, people are going to get there, and it's going to be like ripping the Band-Aid off. There's going to be a family, and they're going to have 20 kids in the car screaming, and they're going to have 4 cases of water for the weekend, and they're going to be mad. They're going to be upset. But that's life. Sometimes the things that need to happen aren't fun and aren't enjoyable, but it's a lot. Like, I bet the national parks probably had a hard time making that decision. I bet that took years to come back and forth. So I think it's a great thing.
Yeah. Well, I just want to clarify too. I don't think the policy is that people can't bring them in. I think it's that at their vendors and their stores, and if they're selling food or anything that they're selling, they're not going to be using plastic for anything. So I don't think it's that you can't bring it in, which would be great. That'd be really hard to probably patrol.
You wouldn't be able to bring anything. No kayaks.
Yeah, but I think, right. Yeah, so I think it's more of they're going to be an example as a business, because they, those, when you're at a place, they sell things and they're a business, they're a merchant. So they want to set an example for other folks that are going to be doing that. And I think it's great. I mean, I think they could be doing it a little quicker. 10 years seems like a long time to phase out single-use plastics, but we'll see what happens with that. But I'm glad they're, at least taking a little bit of a step forward.
Well, I think it's good that an organization of that size and caliber is taking it under, because that's what we need, is more big organizations taking that under, because yes, it will be hard. Even if it's a 10-year plan, I don't care, whatever. Just start doing something. I'd be interested to see how it pans out over 10 years. And because a lot of those things, a lot of them get big plans, and then they just kind of fizzle out over time. And
with the administration turning, it might go by the wayside. But depending on who gets put in power. But yeah, I think it's important that they're going to lead the way and maybe figure out some lessons along the way that they can share with other businesses, other organizations that might want to follow the lead. So, have them make the mistakes, and other groups can follow, maybe give them a little bit of grace as they're figuring it out. But yeah.
I would agree. It's going to be a bumpy road, but more power to them. Thanks, National Parks, for doing something cool. We all need more of that. So before we wrap up here, wow, that went by really fast. Do you think there's anything that you would suggest to people listening that they can do in their personal lives to maybe help reduce? I think everybody's kind of aware at this point of what the common literature says, but maybe any tips that maybe, people you wouldn't just think about, because it's not something you think about, to reduce even a little bit of plastic in their life, because as we talked about at length, it's not easy.
Yeah. Maybe one thing that people don't think about very often is the clothing that they're wearing. So either not purchasing new clothing, or being mindful about like avoiding polyester when you are purchasing clothing, because they shed, polyester is plastic, and when you put it in the washing machine, it sheds the fibers, and that can become part of your septic system, or if you live in a municipal system, that goes right into the wastewater system, and those systems are not designed to filter that stuff out at all. So that's going right back out into our Great Lakes watersheds, wherever that might be for you. If you're listening from Ohio, that's a good part of Ohio. So, and whether it's in the Great Lakes or not, you don't want that stuff. We don't want that stuff in any watershed. So that's something that I've been trying to be a little bit more mindful about, not purchasing any new clothes. I got great clothes, or even just lessening the amount that you're washing your clothes to. That's like maybe one tip, I suppose.
That's a great point. And I've kind of started to do that a little bit myself with my clothing. And, I am by no means wealthy in any way, shape, or form, but like, to me, it makes a lot more sense to have a few pairs of clothing that are really well made. And like, if you watch the podcast on YouTube, you'll notice I wear the same clothes over and over and over again, because I don't have that many. I have clothes that I like and that are like, maybe I do a lot of fishing. I will buy 1 or 2 fishing shirts that are very high end and paying me to purchase for the amount of money they cost, but they are going to last me for hopefully 5, 10, 15 years, as opposed to the cheapest shirt I can find at wherever that's going to last maybe 2 years and rip and essentially become garbage. So I think that's really good. But I didn't even think about that, honestly. It's just kind of like, the more you do this stuff, the more you just naturally go towards these tendencies, I think, just as an environmentally conscious person. So that's a great tip. And, on a closing note, where can people volunteer? Where can they learn more and get involved with Great Lakes Great Responsibility?
Yeah, greatlakeslove.org is our website, which I'm so glad I nabbed that domain name a few years ago. I'm like, how is this available? greatlakeslove.org. This is amazing. Yeah. So you can find out more information there, and you can join the Great Lakes 1 Million Challenge, that big effort to pick up 1 million pieces of trash by counting how many pieces of trash you collect. If you're in the Great Lakes Basin, we like to count Great Lakes Basin data. And then there's a quick Google form on our website, where you can add in, where you were, how many pieces you collected, and then any funny finds. There's like a question in there about any like weird or random stuff that you found, or the most common item. But it's really, I wanted to make it very barrier free. All you have to be able to do is count. You don't need to weigh the trash. Although I think in further iterations of our challenges, we probably will start to collect a little more data, because that data is really, really important for advocating for change.
I got to know whether it's suitable for a workplace environment or not, what's the weirdest thing that you've ever found out there? Because I have found some pretty gross stuff out doing these cleanups that I probably should not say, but yeah.
Lots of hygiene products that are pretty gross. Dirty diapers, all sorts of stuff. I have found like quite a few like doll heads randomly, which is like kind of creepy and weird. Yeah. I have probably the most valuable thing that I've ever found was a 1902 penny, which was pretty cool. And I think it's worth like $5 or something, but sometimes you find trash among the treasure, and I like to collect beach glass too. I think that's, kind of a relic of times gone past. And I guess glass isn't as bad for the lakes as plastic is, but I still collect it in jars. It looks kind of pretty. So
yeah, cool. I since you didn't, I won't say what we found, but it was, you could use your imagination and you will probably assume it was not suitable for work items that we found. But
yeah,
I could talk all day. Meg, I want to thank you. I really appreciate the work you're doing. And I would love people to get involved, whether you're local to where you're at or not. It sounds like you're available all over the Great Lakes, which is awesome. And, I can't guarantee anything. Maybe I'll try and get a group together. We'll go out and pick up some trash and add some data for you, because I haven't done that for years and I kind of miss doing it. It's really fun. So thank you for coming on the podcast, and I appreciate your time.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. Thanks for using your platform to share about these issues too. It's really important, and it allows us to have a bigger voice to your audience too. So appreciate it.